We're on a rooftop, and we're glad you're here with us today, live from the On3 Elite Series Summit. Top college football players in the country are here. I'm David Cohn. This is Blaine Crain. Before we introduce our guest quickly, what's your best guess on where your brother is right this second?
He's probably somewhere in Italy.
He's in Italy?
Italy, annoying the hell out of somebody.
He went to London.
Yep.
I know he's going to London and then to France. Now you think he's in Italy.
You never know with this guy. You really don't know. The spy formation is slowly starting to come together. There's some depth to this story, and the breadcrumbs are starting to add up, and next thing you know, we're going to have a full loaf at the bakery.
Well, that's his brother saying that, so Jake, you can get mad at him. But we're going to hold down the fort today while our boy Jake Crain is in Europe, probably wearing a back-to-back World War champ shirt. But like I said, On3, industry leader when it comes to college football. We're so honored to be here today, and we had to start off this show with our buddy Andy Staples. Andy, thanks so much for joining us.
What's up? No, so do you think people in France are when they see the back-to-back World War champs T-shirt, do they go thank you?
No.
You think they don't appreciate the
Jake said before he left, they better tell me thank you.
Yeah, why do we have to pay for anything over there? To be honest, shouldn't everything be free?
Every croissant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Free crepes for life, at least.
Exactly.
Andy, tell us a little bit about what's going on here today.
So basically, you've got dozens of the best rising high school seniors in the country. So this is the class of 2025, the cream of the crop. You know, you got the #1 QB, Bryce Underwood. You've got #1 offensive lineman, #1 running back, #1 safety, #1 you name it. And they're all here. Some of these guys are committed. We've got guys that are committed to Notre Dame, to Ohio State, to LSU. Some of these guys are deciding, and will probably decide sometime in the next few months where they're going to go to school. And these will be hotly contested recruiting battles between some of the biggest names in the country.
No doubt. Well, again, we're just really honored to be here. Thank you all for having us so much. Thank you to Shannon, Terry, and to Grant and everybody. One of the reasons that I wanted to start with you today, last week, you know, we had a big information dump come on us when with this House versus the NCAA lawsuit. I was hoping maybe you could just break it down from start to finish, because there are listeners across the country here. They love college football like the rest of us.
But they get so bored, and they go to sleep as soon as they start talking about this. Trust me, I know. I do a show about college football every day. I'm like, do I talk about this? Do I really want to put everybody? Because I'm convinced people don't care how the money gets to the players.
Sure.
No,
as long as the game, as long as you tell them what channel the game is on and when it's on,
sure,
they're good. But no, this is a huge monumental thing. Like, the schools are going to pay the players directly. And so what happened is there was a case in the Northern District, California, so in Oakland, House versus the NCAA, and it was basically former athletes suing for back pay, saying, hey, NIL should have been a thing when we played, and you were breaking the Sherman Act by not letting us do it, so you owe us.
So class action and antitrust.
Correct,
okay.
Correct, which means massive damages if you lose in court. The NCAA knew it was going to lose in court, and so they and the power conferences, who were the other defendants in the case, got together and decided to settle it. And they settled it for essentially $2 billion in back pay, $2.7 billion in back pay. $0.7 billion I probably should leave out. That's $700 million, a lot of money. So that's the back pay part of it. The other part of it is, for 10 years going forward, all the schools in those conferences agree that they're going to give 22% of their revenues, which would be television revenue, ticket revenue, donor revenue, to the athletes. And so basically 22% of the average revenues for a power conference school. So
how'd they arrive at that figure?
A lot of negotiating back. Yeah. You ever bought a car?
Negotiating with who?
They slide you the piece of paper.
Right?
Yeah, not the athletes, and this is the key.
Because that's collective bargaining.
This was CBA. This was the conferences negotiating with the class, which is the plaintiffs. But as you said, the class is not necessarily the athletes. Now, here's the tricky part. The plaintiffs' attorneys, who are making massive bank off of this thing, and who are now the people like, so Jeffrey Kessler is one of the attorneys for the plaintiffs. He was one of the people who helped get free agency in the NFL. Like, his place in history is kind of set in stone now. Got free agency in the NFL, got the NCAA to allow schools to pay athletes. Like, it's a big deal. But at a certain point, when you realize you're going to settle this thing, you kind of start working together. And so the plaintiffs work together with the schools and the conferences and the NCAA. And the way they do it is the next 10 years, players want this money, they have to opt into it. And if you opt in, it says you can't sue them over this stuff. And so what they're hoping is that creates enough disincentive for any other plaintiffs' attorneys to create another class action lawsuit. They wouldn't be able to find enough people willing to sue or capable of suing. So that's what they're hoping, is the lawsuits will go away. Now, the judge still has to approve this. And there's also the matter of you can't impose a salary cap unilaterally. You can't without collective bargaining.
Exactly.
As you said. So if they're not going to bargain with the players, they're still going to get sued over and over and over again. So the question is, will they get to the point where they collectively bargain with the players? Now, I do think there's a way to make this work where you might be able to kind of calm down the lawsuits. And I think this is what they have in mind, even though they're not saying it out loud right now. Basically, you have this money that'll come from the schools. We don't know how much is going to go to football, how much is going to basketball, how much is going to go to volleyball players, but you'll split it up among all your athletes in some way, shape, or form. NIL is not going anywhere.
No.
NIL is not going away. And although we pretend it's not pay for play, of course it is. It's you know, these guys that are here are going to sign NIL deals because this revenue sharing won't go into effect until the 25 school year. But they'll sign NIL deals that'll start paying out when they get to campus in the spring in January. And it'll say, you know, for market, you're going to help market us in exchange for this money. You're going to market these products. But it's really for their value as players, because their value as pitchmen is not that great yet. Now, we've got the Cavender twins behind us, the basketball players from Miami. Their value as pitch people is quite high because they have millions of social media followers. But these muscular gentlemen behind us, they're very valuable as football players.
Did Michael Jordan say that? People only want my endorsement because of how good I am on the basketball court, but you're a former college athlete. How do you feel about this?
I don't know. The more I think about it, I just don't know what can ruin college football. I don't think there is something. The only way
don't have the games on television?
Maybe. Hell, maybe. I think an asteroid would have to hit the earth to stop, to be honest. But are we going to get, you said salary cap, you mentioned salary cap. What about Title IX? Right? Are there going to be a lot of sports that get cut from this?
Well, that's what the ADs want you to believe.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If they care enough about those sports, they will raise the money to keep them. If they don't care, they won't. And so all of the people who buy everything the ADs say, because remember, all the ADs have been saying, well, this thing will be a disaster if it happens. Then it happens and it's not a disaster. So they're lying to you about this and trying to create a panic. If they wind up cutting sports, it's because they don't care.
Okay.
It's on them. It is their job to fund them. And yes, the people whose sport makes the money should get the money.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And like, if your sport makes nothing, then you should get a percentage of nothing.
I agree with that.
Yeah, no doubt. So how do you think that'll impact walk-ons? We've heard that. Is that just another selling point from ADs? Because I'll tell you, as a former Division I football player, walk-ons are the lifeblood of college football.
I'm a former walk-on.
Yeah,
so I tell you all about that. But here's the interesting part of that. So instead of scholarship limits, they're going to have roster caps. So instead of saying you can have 85 scholarships, but you can have walk-ons that take you up to this number, they're going to say you can have X number of players. Now, football would like that number to be like 120, which is where the rosters are now, 120, 130. Basketball will want 15 to 18, depending on how many walk-ons they kept. Baseball is going to want 32. You know, they're going to, or excuse me, maybe even a little more than that. And that's going to be interesting to see, because the roster cap is going to be you can have this many players and that's it, but they can all be on scholarship.
Yeah.
So it may change how that works. It may change where a walk-on might go. Now, here's the thing. I find it hard to believe that there'd be a situation where you're a student at the university and they need you and you can play, where they wouldn't take you. They probably have a way to do it. Like, if somebody gets hurt, put them on IR or something like that and open up a roster spot. You can take somebody from the university. There will be ways to make this work, but that part of it will be interesting, because right now, the way the current system is, there's never been a better time to walk on at a power conference school.
True.
Because they are using so many scholarships in the transfer portal versus kids coming out of high school. If you want to go and develop and build, be the depth somewhere, like, let's say you walk on at a school right now and a bunch of your teammates enter the transfer portal after the season and you don't get enough transfers in to replace them all, which sometimes that happens, all of a sudden you just moved up to the depth chart.
Yeah.
You might get a scholarship. So it will change the dynamics of that considerably. It's a question of how. And like, we're in SEC country right here. Baseball is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
SEC baseball is a huge sport.
Huge.
Not profitable at most of the schools still, though. But they spend a fortune on it because they want to be the best at it. They want to win at it. Baseball in the NCAA right now allows 11.7 scholarships. There's hardly any college baseball players on a full scholarship.
Yep.
I guarantee you, when this goes through, every SEC team will fund scholarships for every roster.
The reasoning for that is Title IX, though. We were just talking about that today. Some of the best baseball players I played with at Michigan weren't even on partial scholarships because to make up for 85 scholarships on a football team when there's no female football team, that's like 6 or 7 girl sports you have to have.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see if now men's sports have been getting cut for years because of that. Wrestling has been decimated by that. Men's swimming has not done well. Men's soccer barely exists anymore compared to how plentiful women's soccer teams are. Men's volleyball, same thing. So they've already that's already been happening. The Title IX issue. So somebody asked Jeffrey Kessler about that.
Okay.
The attorney who negotiated this settlement, and he basically goes, "That's going to get settled in the courts. So somebody's going to sue over this.
Yeah.
And the courts are going to come and say,
just good for attorneys. So
well, listen, billable hours remain undefeated.
Undefeated. Oh, go ahead.
Well, anyway, we got you here. I want to talk about this. The Jalen Rashada, Billy Napier situation.
Yeah. Speaking of attorneys, billable hours.
we're talking about suing people and attorneys. Give me your thoughts and what do you think is going to happen?
So this is a really interesting one. So Jaden Rashada is now a quarterback at Georgia, or is headed to Georgia from Arizona State. So he was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2023. Originally commits to Miami. Flips to Florida, we find out because he was signed to a 4-year, $13.89 million contract. And the money behind said contract didn't exist.
Yeah.
So the collective terminates the contract the day after the first payment would have been due. And he still signs with Florida. Now, that's where the interesting part is, because in the lawsuit, he has accused Billy Napier of saying, hey, this booster, Hugh Hathcock, who's another one of the defendants in the lawsuit, he's going to wire you $1 million as long as you sign today. He'll wire you $1 million tomorrow. And they're alleging that Billy Napier said that to Jaden Rashada's father. Yeah. They have not provided any proof of that statement. And Billy Napier got asked about it at SEC spring meetings, and he said, I'm comfortable with all the actions I took. So basically, it would be up to the Rashadas to prove what happened. But here's the thing. I don't think it's good for Billy Napier or Florida in general if this thing goes to discovery, if people start getting deposed in this case. And here's where it gets a little sticky. In a lot of cases, neither party really wants discovery to happen. They just want a settlement to happen and be done. But if you're Billy Napier, you really can't be writing a check to one of Georgia's quarterbacks
can't afford
as Florida's coach. Like, that's just a bad.
Is that bad PR?
That's a
Will
bad
that be
look
taught
right
in every
there.
PR class moving
So
forward?
you've got that. And then here's the other thing. Jaden Rashada and his family and his agents and everybody around him in his orbit, they have been portrayed as villains, as greedy, as incompetent. They really can't look any worse than they already have. So there's really nothing that could come out in discovery that can hurt them. And that makes them extremely dangerous.
Sure.
To Billy Napier and company.
Yeah.
What I found most fascinating about that, apart from a high school quarterback getting offered $13.8 million, not Johnny Manziel or Cam Newton.
And also not the one who was considered the best in that class.
Yeah. What I found most fascinating is Billy Napier. I read through the entire contract, and on that contract, on the back page.
You're welcome. I got that for you.
Thank you. We were talking about you a lot the day we ran this story, but I read the contract. The names on the back of there are not Billy Napier. He didn't sign it.
Nope.
It's not Hathcock, right?
No.
It's Edward Rojas.
It's
with
the Gator Collective, which no longer exists.
Why aren't they named? Why isn't he named?
You can't sue something that doesn't exist.
So even Mr. Rojas, I mean, because that's the only name.
Mr. Rojas has divested himself of this, and you could sue him.
Fair enough.
But I'm not sure you're going to get a whole lot out of that. So, that's part of why the collective dissolved.
Yeah.
And they reformed as a different, with
so that money
different
literally
backing,
was
different
never
everything.
there. They literally wrote that $13.85 million on a piece of paper knowing that they would never pay any of that.
Not knowing they'd never pay it. So I've done a ton of this stuff on this. I've talked to a lot of the people involved. I'm fascinated if it does come to depositions because I know what some of the people are going to say in those depositions. And I think it's going to tell a little bit different story. But the thought was they were acting as the pass-through between the money and Rashada.
Yeah.
Now, when I was doing the story, everybody sort of insinuated that Hugh Hathcock was supposed to be the source of the money, but nobody would ever say that on the record.
Okay.
That's now been said in the lawsuit.
Yes.
He's been sued. I've tried to reach out to him. He has not responded. I'm curious if to hear what he would say. Because what sounds like happened is he said, yeah, I got it. I'll cover it, without knowing what the numbers were. The numbers come back. Everybody signs it. And he's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Because
Buyer's
no
remorse.
one in their right minds would pay that person that level of money.
The more we
no
talk
one.
about it, it just really sounds like they didn't want him to go to Miami.
Yeah.
They
Well,
didn't want
yeah.
him to go to Miami.
I think you're onto something, Blaine, because this is something we talked about on my show last week. Like, if he's not committed to Miami, if he's committed to Ole Miss, Texas A&M, LSU, I don't think any of this happened.
I agree with
point.
you.
I think it was a pissing match between boosters at rival schools, and that's why they were so hell bent on making.
And if I'm mistaken, they're squaring off game 1, correct?
They are
Florida and Miami.
in Gainesville.
In Gainesville.
3:30 in the afternoon, August 31st. Notoriously cool weather in Gainesville on August 31st.
Yeah,
most years.
yeah.
It is
I
going to
can't
be
wait.
a pressure cooker in many
And
ways.
Miami came out 3.5-point favorites.
Wow. I
Three
love
and a
it.
half. Point
that is such a weird game.
Oh, I can't bet it.
If you look at it, just you're comparing rosters. You're like, Miami's got this, but Mario Cristobal has not yet shown himself to be the game day coach.
Yeah, take a knee.
That makes you confident that even when he's got the best roster, that he's going to win.
Sure.
Billy Napier hasn't been that kind of game day coach either since he's been at Florida. I have no idea what happens. All I know is the fan base of the losing team is going to melt down.
Oh.
I'm calling this the Pitchforks and Torches Bowl because it doesn't matter who wins and who loses. The fan base of the losing team is going to be out for blood. They will want that coach fired.
That's how it
the
should be
next
between
day.
Miami and between
Who
Florida.
needs it more? Billy Napier or Mario Cristobal?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I love
Yeah,
it.
yes. That's the problem. That's what makes that game so fascinating. I don't know if it's going to be the best game of the opening day because you got Clemson, Georgia right before that. You've got some other really good games that weekend. You got LSU, USC on Sunday. But that game feels like it's the most dramatic because we will overreact to it the most, no matter what
I'll
happens.
tell you one more thing I do know about that game. If it comes down to taking a knee for Miami to win, Mario Cristobal
He
will
better.
take the knee.
He's
and
got to at this point. Y'all know after the Georgia Tech thing happened last year, like everybody found video of the same thing happening when he was
at Oregon. Yeah.
So
they sent it to us.
it's never going to happen again. He's going to take the knee. He has said that. He knows that. He's going to take a knee.
One more question. We're here with Andy Staples. Again, we're going to let you plug your show at the end. If you don't know who Andy Staples is, I don't know if you're really a college football fan. Just hit on this one more topic because I know you've spoken about it before, and it's something I've been advocating for on our show. What really makes this whole NIL and pay-for-play, situation so much more complicated is we're talking about public institutions.
Yeah.
I come from, both my parents are academics, right?
Yep.
Professors. They work in administration. The first and foremost responsibility of these institutions is to deliver education, right? And I know that we all love college football. I know that's where a lot of the money.
I have a saying, Mr. Cohn, that the business of college is much bigger than the business of college sports.
Okay, sure.
These are multi-billion-dollar,
and especially when you're
institutions.
starting to talk about the universities with endowments, which sometimes are private versus
these
public.
athletic budgets are a drop in the bucket compared to the total budget of a university.
So talk about that then when I ask this question, because I've seen you advocate, and there are many others around the country, a lot of athletic directors too, who say, why can't the money from the distribution deals to the athletes come directly from the conferences and sort of, not necessarily have it come from these institutions where it's already complicated because they're public institutions.
Right. And that idea is something I first heard from different athletic directors.
Okay.
And that it makes sense because here's the thing, like, I'll give you an example. The state of South Carolina. State employees can't unionize. They're not allowed. State law forbids it. So how could South Carolina and Clemson athletes unionize if they were employees of the university? How could you collectively bargain with them at all? It's not allowed by their state law. Well, if they were employees of the SEC and the ACC, respectively. Now, Clemson may not be in the ACC at that point, but that's
What do you know?
Another conversation.
What do you know that we don't know?
Andy.
Well, they are suing the ACC to get out.
That we do know.
But So let's say the South Carolina players were employees of the SEC. They are now employees of a private entity that is subject only to Alabama employment law. So you have one state's employment law that you have to deal with, which takes away a lot of the complications, and it's a private entity. That allows you a little more latitude to do some stuff. Now, the schools still don't want them to be employees of anything. The conferences, because they're run by the schools, don't want them to be employees of anything. And what I find interesting is that some of the people trying to organize this, because look, here's the thing you have to remember about college sports. There's always somebody trying to make a buck off of everything.
Yep.
So you've had union groups sniffing around for over a decade, trying to be the union, trying to be the players union for football players, basketball players, you name it.
Yeah.
Some of the people who are doing that are now saying, well, they don't have to be employees. You could still bargain with them as a block.
Or as contractors, right?
Correct. They could be, look, we live in the gig economy these days. Mm-hmm. And I think, a lot of folks paying taxes off 1099s.
Sure. I did it for years.
Exactly. I mean, anybody, like on my side of the business, like if you've been a writer, you've done it.
Yeah.
So it is possible. Now, according to the folks who are doing the organizing, it's funny because they now are saying, well, we need an act of Congress, because the schools and the conference have been saying, we need Congress to come in.
Yeah.
Like, now you've got the union organizers saying, we need an act of Congress so they can negotiate with them if they're not actually employees. But I do think there's a way. There is a path to that, and I do think ultimately that is the path they're going to have to go down, because if they don't, whether this settlement goes through and works as intended or not, that period's going to run out. The lawsuits will just start again. The only way to keep yourself lawsuit-proof, now you can, look, anybody can sue anybody, but NFL players aren't suing the NFL saying the salary cap is unjust, because the Players Association agreed to it.
Yep.
So that's the best way to do it. That's the best way to handle it.
Straight with the conferences.
I
like it.
And I think more importantly, it's because everybody's focused on the money. I think if you ask coaches, the money's secondary. They're not as worried about the money as they are having rules that can be enforced, having rules for player movement that can be enforced. Like, you can't, none of this addresses the transfer situation, because the transfer rules are hung up in federal court.
My thought on that, though, is if the agreement is directly between the athletes and the conferences rather than directly with the schools. I mean, if the top quarterback here, we're going to see, the kid committed to Tennessee right here from Brentwood, if you make the connection directly with the conference, then there could be a stipulation upon signing saying, well, now you can't transfer to another SEC school.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you sign that.
Yes. Yeah. As long as, listen, if you have employment deals, although it's funny because the Federal Trade Commission just outlawed non-competes. So that's
now it gets
a whole
more
other
complicated.
whole other can of worms. But I do think there's a path to that.
Okay.
If they are willing to go down that road where they're either employees or contractors, you can make that happen, and you can have rules, if you collectively bargain them, that would keep this all the time free agency at bay.
Which is what most people want.
Coaches hate, and that's 100%. The part people hate. Like, if you knew, now I'd be curious, like these guys behind us, like if I were one of them, so all of these guys have dozens of scholarship offers.
Yeah.
If I were one of them, I would not sign more than a 1-year deal. Like, let's say that system's in place and you can sign 1-year deal, 2-year deal, 3-year deal, 4-year deal. If you're them, you sign a 1-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you're me coming out of high school and somebody wants you at your school, I'm signing a 4-year deal.
Oh, yeah.
Because
max contract.
What happens when you go and you underperform as a freshman, and it takes you 2 or 3 years to be able, or you get injured? That's another situation, because it's more than just about the money. There's going to be health benefits that come into this, health care, all sorts of things in the conversation.
Yeah, so it really would depend on your leverage and everything else. It's just like anything else.
We've seen LeBron do that for years.
Yeah.
LeBron, I'm not signing more than a 1-year deal because I know the next year I'm still going to be as sought after.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the thing. We'll see how this goes, but that is, I am convinced more than ever that's going to happen. Like, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I'd have said, no, never going to happen. Mm-hmm. The schools will never go down that path. I think the coaches are just absolutely fed up with this. The ADs are fed up with this.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things they're fed up with. They're fed up with all the time free agency, constantly recruiting your own roster. That sucks. Let's be real. Like, trying to convince 17-year-olds to come to your school is hard enough, but trying to convince 19-year-olds to stay at your school constantly is a pain in the ass.
No doubt.
So they get paid a lot of money, yes, and I don't feel that sorry for them, but it does suck. I'm not going to lie about that. The other piece of it is the ADs are sick of asking the donors to foot the bill for paying the players. And even with the revenue sharing, they're still going to have to do that. If they cap the amount the schools can give, they're still going to have to beg the donors for more money to pay the players. And I'm telling you, the donors are going to get fed up.
I've heard from these donors.
They hate it.
We're tired of it. We're not getting any ROI. And this idea that these billionaires in Texas have all the money in the world. How do you think they got that?
Yeah, there's a reason
not
they
by
got all that money.
business.
Yeah, they ain't spending stuff.
Well, there's no return on investment.
And how insulting is it? And I know the coaches hate making these pitches, but when the coach or the AD gets up there and goes, "Well, we need you to dig deep, or we're not going to be able to compete."
Yeah.
Like, shut up.
Yeah.
We see your TV contract.
Yeah.
Compete.
Liar.
I love it. Andy Staples, thanks so much for joining us. Please tell everybody where they can watch your show.
You can watch me on the On3 Sports YouTube channel. You can watch me on my own Twitter feed at Andy_Staples. We are live every day, 7 p.m. Oh, shoot, I got the old time slot.
Yeah.
I'm a morning guy now. I'm a morning person now. Yeah, so I am 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. And then once the season starts, we are going at night. Post-game shows on Saturday.
Wow.
My favorite show of the week. It is, the chat is on fire.
I bet. We do one Sunday morning, and people are just
best show
freaking
of the week.
Well, that'll be the best. They can stay up with me and get up with you.
There
Come
we
on
go.
now. What's better than that?
We're best friends here. I love to see it. Thank you so much for joining.
The GOAT, Andy Staples. Really appreciate it,
Always
Andy.
insightful, Mr. Andy Staples.
What's up, YouTube? Hey, do us a favor. We appreciate all the subscriptions. If you haven't subscribed to the show yet, please do. Keep sharing the channel as we barrel toward football season. Y'all know what's about to happen.